Hey everyone, and welcome to the Steam Deck gaming channel. Today we're having a look at Doom Eternal on Steam Deck and Switch. So can you tell the difference between these two? Especially looking at the floor with something very different. So just as I'm getting into the intro here, let me know if you can tell the difference before it flashes up which side is the Steam Deck and which side is Switch. One is definitely running at higher frames than the other, but quality wise it seems to go back and forth. Now in these early scenes, as you can see, Switch is actually on the right with Steam Deck on the left. It does appear that even with high settings on Steam Deck for Doom Eternal, that this Switch has slightly better quality, and I couldn't quite understand this considering the Switch version. I really thought I was losing my mind that the Switch did look better in this first instance. Now it really is quite obvious on the character models, as you'll see when we're doing the death animations, that the Switch seems to have higher detail on those character models overall. The scenery looks around the same, except when you look close up, when we're up close to the pillars, and if you look at the gun, the quality on the Steam Deck is a little bit higher. Now this becomes a little bit more obvious when we come full screen, but this becomes very inconsistent a little bit later on, so bear with me and you'll see what I mean. Moving around though with the Steam Deck, it is so responsive, it is unbelievable, and Doom Eternal really does lend itself for quick responses. The 60 frames per second, which we'll see in the overlay a little bit later, really does lend itself to the Steam Deck, and you really do want 60 frames plus really in Doom Eternal to get that nice feeling. Although I did leave motion blur on by accident, which does take away from some of that settings. As you'll see now we're on the Switch, the colour brightness, the gamma is just not as nice as on the Steam Deck. It definitely doesn't have that colour depth that the Steam Deck does, and this really shows up on the screen as well. The other thing to note is that the Switch is stuck at 30 frames per second, and it really does feel quite nauseating moving around quite quickly if you are used to 60 plus frames per second. Also, the Joy-Cons do not feel anywhere near as nice as the Steam Deck, and it really is quite annoying to move around a lot of the time. Now this is what I mean about the quality. As we come into the cutscene here, you'll notice that when we freeze frame on the skull here, that not only have we got a much wider picture, as we've got weird banding coming in for the cutscenes on Switch, but the quality and the graphics of the character model and detailing is much more pronounced on the Steam Deck side. So the first level does seem to lend itself to slightly better quality on the Switch. However, once we go outside in that first level, we see a huge drop in those character models on Switch, as well as a lot of the detail lacking in the overall environment. So now we've got them back side by side with some chaos action past that initial level. We start to see the benefit even more on the Steam Deck side of that not only 60 frames per second, but actually some of the better visuals and gamma as well, and this really shows as we come back full screen. You see these details in those death animations much more clearly, the blood splatter effects far more pronounced, and the explosions much more vibrant. The Steam Deck definitely does feel a lot better on the controls, and moving between 30 and 60 frames per second, it really does make it difficult going back to 30 frames per second. On top of this, the price difference, which we'll come on to shortly, really does make a huge difference. So you can see up in the overlay, we are dropping under 60 frames per second slightly, but it is only very slightly. It's 58 to 60 frames per second. With a bit more tweaking of those settings, you'll see that a bit better. And this is where we see that big change all of a sudden. If you look at the Spider Brain, as I can't pronounce its actual enemy name, you'll see the quality on the Switch version once we switched over is much less detailed than it was on the Steam Deck. So this is a full switch from that first level, no pun intended. However, we do notice that even in those death animations, that the quality is just not as clean as on the Steam Deck. So it does feel like they did some extra work in that very first level to make the Switch look better than it is throughout the game, as I see this more and more in games where the first level is far more optimized than the rest of the game. Overall though, it is playable on the Switch, but as I was saying earlier, there is a huge price difference. Now overall, depending on the model, the Steam Deck is generally more expensive than the Switch. However, the games definitely seem to be a lot more expensive on Switch than they are on Steam Deck because of Steam Store. For example, picking up Doom Eternal here will cost you around £35, dollars or euros depending on your currency on the PC, but on Switch it will cost you $50. Yes, $50, pounds or euros depending on your currency, is quite a hefty price to play Doom Eternal on Switch. So you don't expect that to come down in price at all, whereas on PC you will be able to pick up a bargain in the sales. So not only do we have better frame rate and better quality overall on the Steam Deck, we also have a cheaper game price. Now that's going to pay dividends the more games you buy, making that hardware price difference a lot more beneficial moving forwards. I'll leave you with the last bit of gameplay here with some frantic gameplay on both Steam Deck and Switch, and you can let me know if you're going to be playing on Steam Deck anytime soon or whether you are going to be sticking with your Switch. Thanks for watching, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all things Steam Deck, and we will see you next time.